Well, it's the day after Christmas. This is a time when most of us, especially us with a little bit of age on us, start reflecting on things, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. Yeah, even when we're old, we think about the future. And I guess I wanted to talk to you about that as well. But one thing I decided to do this time was just let you into my background a little bit. Some people are interested. If you're not interested, then you know what to do. But as most of you know, I'm 76. My name is Cher. Actually, it's Sharon, but it was shortened to Cher by a guy that I dated back in the 70s who looked like, well, this is when Sonny and Cher were popular. And he looked a lot like Sonny. I remember making the comment one time that he looked like Sonny. And he said, yep, and you're my Cher. And at the time, I had very long hair, almost down to my waist. And of course, I was I 30? I wasn't 30 yet. I was in my mid to late 20s, I guess. But anyway, enough of that one. Back to my original story that I wanted to share with you. My dad is full-blooded Filipino. My mother was Caucasian. And I guess they must have met. I don't know where they met. But anyway, my dad was a professor of English at the University of Manila in the Philippines. We left because of Marcos and Huc, H-U-C, which is a form of communism. This is about the same time that he declared himself to be president for life. My dad had, I think he had a double master's actually. Very well respected in the Philippines. Got to straighten this out a little bit. And anyway, we moved. Well, okay, when I was 2, I'll start there because, well, when I was 2, which was about 1950, we moved to the United States. And again, this was because of Marcos. And if you don't know, Marcos was one who was just a very nasty man. And if people, men especially, didn't agree with his politics, he would have them killed in the middle of the street, yank them out of their home at night, in front of their families, etc. So, this is Marcos. This was Marcos. And we came over here to the United States. I was told that my brother fell off the boat. He was 5 years older than me, is 5 years. And I developed pneumonia on the boat. A Filipino doctor worked on me. And in fact, many of the people that we traveled with were very well educated, and they worked at the university. One of the men who came over with us, and I guess his family as well, I only knew as Dean, and later I found out that he was the dean of the university. As I said, my dad was very well educated, was professor of English. Many of his friends were engineers. This was 1950-ish. And at the time, there was still an awful lot of bias toward dark-skinned people. And my dad really wasn't even that dark skinned, but it didn't matter. I think my dad was probably, his complexion was probably a lot like mine is today. But anyway, we floated around a little bit, and he was not able to get a job at in the school system because of his dark skin, color of his skin. So he ended up, as did many of his friends, as a cook at the Indianapolis Athletic Club in Indianapolis. They ended up as cooks in other places, but anyway, you get the gist of it. One of the places that we lived was in Indianapolis, close to downtown area, in an apartment on East North Street. Now, if you get out your Indianapolis map and trace down East North Street, you'll see that it was literally blocks away from the People's Temple. We lived in an apartment complex, as I said, and across the way from us, now keep in mind I was about 2.5 at this time, and believe it or not, my memory goes back that far. I don't think my dad actually believed it until I drew him a layout of our apartment, where the rooms were and that type of thing. But I remember it all. I remember it very well. I remember the stove that we cooked on. I remember the neighbor across the, what would you call it, across the floor. Our neighbor was directly across the hall from us, and that was Jimmy Jones. At the time, I remember that he lived with who he called his adopted son, who was about 11, I think, at the time, which was, well, it's older than what my brother would have been, because, like I said, my brother's 5 years older than me. But he lived over there with his pet monkey and his adopted son. I have no idea what happened to that boy. Absolutely none. He used to come over and use our telephone. We were one of the very few people in the apartment complex that actually had a phone. But he would come over and use the phone. I remember that he was tall and seemingly dark, as I recall. But then, when you're that age, everybody's tall. I mean, you're barely reaching somebody's thigh. So everybody is tall. But that's what I recall about him. I do know that my mother, who later left us, divorced the family, said that he was strange. But she still let us use the phone, so I guess she must have thought that he was harmless. Strange, but strange nevertheless. And as time went on, I forgot about him until Jonestown happened. My brother called me and he said, "Cher, you know who that is, don't you?" No. He said, "He's the one who used to live across from us at East North Street. He used to come over and use the phone." Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay, I remember him. Well, the thing is, he and most cult leaders would focus on people who were outcasts in society. And although I have never thought of my dad as being an outcast. He was my hero. I guess the fact that he was married to a white woman, and as recent as 1950s, it was actually illegal for a Filipino man to marry a white woman in the state of California. I guess it's a good thing we were in Indiana. But anyway, he is the one who killed all those people, all those innocent people, children included, and that was my brush with him. But because he did rely on people who were outcasts, I regard myself as being very lucky, very blessed, very looked after. Because if my parents hadn't been the parents that they were, we could have very well have been part of his community. Sorry, I just had to reflect there. But my dad was, as I said, very well educated. He was nobody's fool. My mother was hard-headed, and she wouldn't have fallen for that as well. So, in later years, we moved from there to a house. Can't remember the name of the Brookside Avenue, maybe? Seems like it might have been Brookside Avenue. And we must have lived there for a couple years before we moved to our home that I actually grew up in on Westview Drive in Indianapolis. 1824, Westview Drive. It was a great area to live in, across from Rhodius Park, and as a kid we used to go sledding down this what seemed like a humongous hill. Excuse me. And anyway, there were a lot of kids. I remember counting them one time on the block that we lived in and the block across the street. And there were over 100 kids. So, and the school was just down the street, School 49. So, anyway, I won't go into that part, but I do remember when we lived on Brookside Avenue, there was a man with a pony who used to come around. And that picture of me is on some of my social media pages. But they took the picture of me on the pony next door, and I remember that so clearly. The lady next door saw the picture and told my mother she wanted a picture, a copy of that. And my mother was just enthralled. She thought it was so sweet that this old lady wanted a picture of her little girl on the pony. And as it turned out, her cat was actually posed in the window, and she didn't want the picture of me. She wanted the picture of her cat. True story. True story. But anyway, that's my brush with Jim Jones, and possibly the closest I could have gotten to evil in my 76 years so far. But I was protected by the Lord, by my mom and dad, people around me. We all were. So if you ever feel like you're alone, nobody is there for you, know that there always is. Always somebody there who cares about you. And regardless of what your beliefs are, your religion, you do have someone who's looking over you. And even though I haven't met you, I care. I truly do. I care about all my friends on Facebook, though even those who I haven't met and I never will meet, I care for all of you. So, in closing, God bless you and have a great end of the year. I'll see you before the new year, but have a great, happy, and safe new year. Again, God bless you.